After 6 hours, your feet would be frostbitten. After 12, you would give up. After 24, you would be dead. A modern person who found themselves in a Native American winter camp would face not just the cold, but a reality for which they were completely unprepared. It's not about the lack of trendy gadgets or high-tech clothing. The problem is much deeper, a complete misunderstanding of the laws of this icy world. Survival here is not an extreme sport, but a science honed over millennia. Modern ideas about survival, gleaned from movies and TV shows, do not work here. They are not just useless, they are dangerous as they create a false sense of confidence. Watch the video to the end, and you will learn why your main enemy is not the cold, but your own mind, and how knowledge about the properties of snow was valued more than hunting skills. What if I told you that everything you believed about surviving in the wild is not true? The main mistake a beginner makes happens even before they start to freeze. It is a mistake in thinking, a false assumption that predetermines failure from the very beginning. Modern man perceives the wilderness as a hostile environment that must be conquered or defeated. He enters into a struggle with the elements, trying to oppose them with his strength and endurance. This is a sure path to a quick and inglorious
We
death.
share teachings about balance and respect, and a philosophy of acceptance, not confrontation.
Indigenous peoples never fought nature. They became part of it. They did not waste precious energy on resistance, but used their knowledge of the laws of this world to move in harmony with it. This is a philosophy of acceptance, not confrontation. You would panic when faced with the first difficulties, the inability to quickly build a fire or find food. Panic is a rush of adrenaline that causes you to take chaotic and energy-consuming actions. In extreme cold, this is an unaffordable luxury. Calmness and methodicalness are the keys to survival. Every action must be measured, economical, and well thought out. The indigenous people acted without fuss, conserving their energy for truly important tasks. You would start cursing the cold, wind, and snow, sinking into a pit of self-pity and despair. This state of mind paralyzes the will and shuts down the ability to think analytically. You would simply give up long before your body exhausted its physical resources. For the Indian, winter was not a curse, but just one of the states of the world, with its own rules and opportunities. He knew how to find beauty in the harsh winter landscape and peace in the deafening silence. This gave him a psychological stability that is inaccessible to modern man.
The strongest among us, they tried to fight the snow with only muscle, and they failed.
You would rely on your physical strength trying to break through the snowdrifts or chop a mountain of wood. But in the winter forest, brute force is useless. Here it is not the strongest who wins, but the wisest and most patient. Your mind, accustomed to comfort and quick decisions, would be your worst enemy. It would demand immediate rescue, warmth, and food, not understanding that the path to them lies through slow, methodical steps. You would burn in the fire of your own anxiety.
The strength of mind was the first shield against winter's trials.
Ultimately, you would have lost not to the cold, but to your inner dialogue. Survival in a winter camp is first and foremost a test of spirit, and only then of body. I am very interested to hear your point of view. What do you think about the role of psychological preparation in extreme conditions? Write about it in the comments. Are you ready to learn the truth about why your most expensive winter jacket won't save you? The first thing you'll encounter is cold that penetrates to your bones. Your modern layered clothing, designed for short walks around the city, will be practically useless here. The main mistake in your clothing is that it doesn't breathe properly. Synthetic materials can retain heat well, but they don't wick moisture away from the body. After the first serious physical exertion, you will sweat, and then this moisture will instantly cool down, turning your clothes into an icy shell. The indigenous peoples of the Great Plains and Subarctic used treated animal skins, such as caribou, for clothing. The secret was in the unique structure of the fur. The hollow hairs created an ideal air layer. Such clothing was incredibly warm, yet lightweight.
This is a treated buckskin. It will keep you very warm.
The cut of the clothing was also of paramount importance. Loose-fitting parkas and pants did not restrict movement and allowed air to circulate. This allowed moisture to evaporate rather than accumulate on the skin. Your footwear is likely to be your first enemy. Tight boots restrict blood circulation, and your feet will start to freeze, even if the shoes themselves are very warm. Indigenous peoples wore soft and spacious moccasins, leaving room for several layers of dry grass insoles, which absorbed moisture and provided additional insulation for the foot. You would not pay enough attention to your hands and head. Regular gloves get wet quickly and stop providing warmth. Native Americans used roomy mittens, often lined with fur, which allowed the fingers to be warmed by the heat of the entire palm. You would underestimate the importance of a hood. A properly tailored hood with a fur trim, like those worn by northern peoples, creates a calm zone around the face. It protects against headwinds and allows warm exhaled air to further warm the skin. You would not know how to dry clothes properly. Attempting to dry wet clothes by a large fire will cause leather clothing and shoes to shrink and become stiff as wood. Clothes were dried slowly, using the warmth of one's own body or away from open fire in a dwelling. All your clothes would be chosen incorrectly. Too many or too few layers, too tight, made of unsuitable materials. You would constantly sweat or freeze, wasting precious energy on futile thermoregulation. As a result, hypothermia would set in not because of a lack of clothing, but because of an inability to use it properly. Clothing was the first line of defense, and any mistake here was fatal. But even the perfect clothing is useless without proper shelter. Ready to find out why the ordinary Indian teepee was a more perfect dwelling than many modern tents? I will reveal the most closely guarded secret of Native American dwellings. Your idea of a teepee as a simple cone made of sticks and skins is fundamentally wrong. In fact, it was a high-tech and perfectly designed structure, a true marvel of engineering, refined over centuries. First, the cone shape was not accidental. It gave the dwelling incredible resistance to the strong winds of the Great Plains. The wind simply flowed around the teepee without creating critical pressure on any of its sides. Secondly, the teepee was not symmetrical. Its base was oval, and the cone itself was slightly tilted backward. This made the back wall steeper, allowing it to better withstand the prevailing westerly winds. The secret to the comfort inside the teepee lay in its ventilation system. At the top was a smoke hole, which was regulated by two special poles called ears. These could be used to catch the wind to increase draft, or conversely, to protect the hearth from rain and snow. But the real magic was hidden inside. An additional canopy made of skins, about 1.5 meters high, was stretched along the inner perimeter of the teepee. It created an air gap that worked like a thermos, insulating the living space from the cold outer cover. This inner canopy solved another important problem. Cold air coming in from below, under the outer layer, passed between the two layers of fabric, was heated by the hearth and rose upward, creating a constant circulation of fresh air. This prevented smoke from accumulating inside the dwelling.
This is a good place.
The hearth was not located in the center, but was slightly offset towards the entrance. This simple solution allowed the smoke to rise more efficiently and created different temperature zones inside the dwelling. It was cooler at the entrance and warmer and cozier in the back. Forest peoples, such as the Iroquois, did not build teepees, but long houses called owachira. These were huge frame structures covered with elm bark, capable of accommodating several families. Inside such a house, a microclimate was maintained that allowed even the harshest winters to be comfortably endured. Regardless of the type, dwellings were never built in open, windy places. The Indians chose sites protected from the wind by forests or folds in the terrain. They knew how to read the landscape and use it as a natural shield. You would most likely pitch your tent on the first flat spot you come across, without considering the wind direction and terrain. Your dwelling would quickly cool down, and attempts to warm up would lead to the accumulation of dangerous condensation. You would freeze in your own shelter, not understanding what you did wrong. What you are about to learn will change your perception of fire. Your second fatal mistake would be related to fire. You would spend several hours and a lot of energy gathering a huge pile of firewood and building a large, spectacular fire, believing that it would save you. In fact, a large fire is bad for survival. It consumes a huge amount of fuel, which is a precious and hard-to-find resource in winter. It creates only a small comfort zone around itself, leaving your back exposed to the icy wind. Indigenous peoples never built huge fires for heating. Their hearth in a teepee was small, about the size of a plate. Its purpose was not to heat the entire room at once, but to create a constant and effective source of heat. The secret lay in the correct use of wood and stones. They used only dry wood, which they harvested in advance or knew how to find even under the snow. Several stones were placed in the hearth, which when heated, turned into heat accumulators, giving off gentle heat long after the wood had burned out. You would not know how to properly prepare a place for a fire in the snow. If you lit a fire directly on a snowdrift, you would be surprised to find that it gradually melts and sinks into the hole that is formed, taking all the heat with it. Before lighting the fire, it was necessary to either clear the snow down to the ground or make a platform out of thick, damp logs. You wouldn't be able to start a fire without matches or a lighter. The indigenous people knew dozens of ways to make fire by friction or striking sparks, but more importantly, they always carried tinder with them, a highly flammable material that guaranteed quick ignition in all conditions. You wouldn't understand the difference between different types of wood. Birch bark is ideal for kindling, while dry pine produces a lot of heat but burns quickly. Hardwoods such as oak or maple burn slowly and evenly, ideal for maintaining heat in a fire pit. Your large fire would be visible for miles, revealing your location. A small hearth inside a teepee was virtually invisible from the outside. This was important not only for safety, but also for maintaining harmony with the surrounding world. You would burn all your firewood on the first night and be left alone with the cold in the morning, exhausted and demoralized. The Indians, on the other hand, stretched their supplies, using the heat as efficiently as possible. Their fire was a controllable tool, while yours was an uncontrollable and wasteful force of nature. The fire was the heart of the camp, but it could not solve all problems. The main one was food. In the next chapter, you will learn why it was almost impossible to hunt in winter and what Native Americans actually ate to survive. You would think that the winter forest is full of game, and your main task is to hunt it. This is another misconception imposed by popular culture. In winter, animals become incredibly cautious. There are few of them, and it is almost impossible to track them in the snow without special skills.
We must not rely on luck. Our survival requires knowledge as well. Knowledge and patience. We must observe.
Attempts to hunt would only lead to a pointless waste of calories. You would wander through the forest for hours, leaving a trail of footprints behind you that would scare away all living creatures within a radius of several kilometers. You would return to camp tired, hungry, and cold. The basis of the Native Americans' winter diet was not fresh game, but supplies made in the summer and fall. They were masters of food preservation. The main strategic resource was pemmican. Pemmican is a unique product, a real energy bomb. It consisted of dried and powdered meat mixed with melted fat and dried berries. This mixture could be stored for years without losing its nutritional properties. A few pieces of pemmican were enough to keep you going for a whole day of hard travel. It was high in calories, light, and didn't need to be cooked. It was the perfect food for survival. In addition to meat, Native Americans also preserved fish. They dried, smoked, and cured it, turning it into a light and nutritious product. In some regions rich in water bodies, fish was the basis of the winter diet. They also gathered and dried various berries, nuts, and edible roots. These plant components were not only a source of carbohydrates, but also vitamins necessary to prevent scurvy and other diseases associated with vitamin deficiency. They did not stop gathering in winter. They knew which roots could be dug out from under the snow, which bark could be used for food, and where to find larvae under the bark of fallen trees. These were not the main components of their diet, but they were important additions. They knew how to set snares and traps for small animals that did not require constant human presence. Such passive hunting was much more effective and less energy-intensive than actively pursuing large game. You would have died of hunger not because there was no food in the forest, but because you would not have known where to look for it and how to preserve it. You would have searched for large prey, not noticing the abundance of food that was literally at your feet. Your survival would have ended with the last bar eaten from your backpack. What if I showed you a time machine that could take you back in time? Your third critical mistake would become apparent the first time you tried to go anywhere. You would start moving through deep snow, sinking knee-deep or waist-deep with every step. This kind of movement is a tremendous waste of energy. Within 10 minutes, you would be exhausted, soaked with sweat, and not even 100 meters closer to your destination. Every movement would be a struggle. Indigenous peoples never struggled with snow. They used one of humanity's greatest inventions, snowshoes. This simple-looking device distributed a person's weight over a large area, allowing them to walk on the surface of the snow rather than sink into it.
These snowshoes were our lifeline, allowing our ancestors to hunt and travel even in the deepest snows of winter.
The design of snowshoes varied depending on the region and type of snow. For deep, fluffy snow in forest areas, wide, short snowshoes similar to tennis rackets were used. On plains where the snow was denser, long, narrow models were used for speed. You would not know how to walk properly on snowshoes. It requires a special sliding step that only comes with practice. You would constantly stumble, get tangled up, and fall, losing even more energy. Even without snowshoes, the Indians knew how to move through the snow with minimal effort. They found areas with dense snow cover, moved along frozen riverbeds, or used animal tracks, which instinctively choose the easiest pass. You would walk straight towards your goal, ignoring the terrain. The indigenous people always took the path of least resistance, avoiding steep slopes and deep ravines. They understood that conserving energy was more important than shortening the distance. You would move too fast in an attempt to keep warm. This would lead to overheating, sweating, and subsequent dangerous hypothermia. Experienced people move slowly and steadily, maintaining a constant body temperature. You would be carrying a heavy and uncomfortable backpack. The equipment of the indigenous peoples was minimalist and perfectly suited for carrying. They used sleds, toboggan, that glided easily over the snow, allowing them to transport heavy loads without straining their backs. As a result, any attempt to leave the camp would be torture for you. You would be confined to a radius of 100 meters from your shelter, unable to gather firewood or find food. You would become a prisoner of the snowy desert. But even if you learned how to move around, another problem would await you: how to find your way in a monotonous white world. In the next chapter, we will talk about the art of navigation without a compass or GPS. You would be surrounded by millions of tons of frozen water, but you would still suffer from dehydration. This is one of the paradoxes of winter survival. In the cold, the feeling of thirst is dulled, and a person does not notice how their body loses moisture with every exhalation. Your first mistake would be to try to eat snow. Eating snow to quench your thirst is a sure way to get hypothermia. Your body will use a ton of precious energy to melt the snow and warm it up to body temperature.
This is why we melt the snow and we do not eat it directly, to preserve our body heat and energy.
The correct way to obtain water is to melt snow in a pot over a fire. But there are some subtleties here as well. If you simply fill the pot with snow and put it on the fire, the bottom layer will melt, and the top layer, having no contact with water, may simply burn the bottom of the pot. Experienced people first poured a little water into the bottom of the pot and then added snow in small portions. This ensured efficient heat transfer and rapid melting. If there was no water at all, they started with a very small fire. The process of melting snow takes time and fuel. Therefore, the indigenous people preferred, whenever possible, to use ice from frozen rivers or lakes. Ice is denser than snow, and the same volume produces much more water. They knew how to determine the quality of ice. Transparent bluish ice was clean and safe. White, cloudy ice could contain frozen air bubbles and impurities, so they tried to avoid it. You would not know that dehydration occurs imperceptibly, but its consequences are very serious. Blood thickening, kidney dysfunction, decreased mental and physical performance. All this would happen to you gradually but inevitably. Indigenous peoples drank a lot of warm liquids, usually in the form of pine needle or berry decoctions. This not only replenished their moisture reserves but also served as a source of vitamins. They understood that hydration was as important as food and warmth. You would not understand the connection between dehydration and frostbite. Thick blood circulates less efficiently through the small capillaries in the extremities, which significantly increases the risk of frostbite. By maintaining their water balance, Native Americans protected themselves from this danger as well. You would simply forget to drink, distracted by the struggle against cold and hunger. Your body would slowly fade away from lack of fluids. You would become weak, apathetic, and unable to make the right decisions long before you realize the true cause of your condition. If you found yourself in the middle of a snow-covered plain or in a winter forest, you would instantly lose your bearings. Everything around you would seem the same, white and featureless. Your smartphone with GPS would be useless because the battery would die in the cold and you might not have a compass. For the indigenous people, the snow-covered landscape was not monotonous. It was an open book, full of signs and clues. They knew how to read this book and find their way where you saw only emptiness.
This land is like a book, children. Every track, every drift tells a story, if you know how to read it.
The main landmark was the sun. They knew its trajectory at different times of the year and could determine the cardinal directions with sufficient accuracy, even along its short winter path. At noon, the sun always pointed south. At night, the stars and the moon served as landmarks. The North Star was a fixed beacon pointing north. They knew the constellations and their movement across the night sky. Even in cloudy weather, there were ways to orient themselves. The prevailing winds, especially on the Great Plains, were constant. They formed drifts and snowdrifts, of a certain shape and direction, which served as a natural compass. Trees also provided a lot of information. On the north side of the trunks, the bark was usually darker and rougher, and the branches were shorter and sparser. On the south side, on the contrary, the tree received more light and heat, so the branches there were longer and denser. Moss and lichens also preferred to grow on the northern, more shaded and humid side of trees and rocks. This sign was not completely reliable, but in combination with others, it gave the correct direction. They knew how to memorize the landscape and create a detailed three-dimensional map of the area in their minds. Every hill, bend in the river, or landmark tree was a point on this mental map. They didn't just walk, they always knew where they were. You would be moving blindly, most likely in circles, as lost people often do. Your sense of direction, atrophied in urban conditions, would fail you within the first few hours. Fear and panic would only exacerbate the situation. Losing your bearings in a winter forest is equivalent to a death sentence. You would not be able to return to your camp, even if it were only a kilometer away. You would simply wander aimlessly until your strength ran out. Your most fundamental mistake would be to try to survive alone. The whole concept of the modern survivalist is that of a lone hero facing the wilderness. This concept has nothing to do with reality. Native Americans never survived alone. The basis of their resilience was the community, the family, the clan. The winter camp was a unified, well-coordinated organism where everyone played their part. Gathering firewood, cooking, maintaining the dwelling, making and repairing clothing. All these tasks were distributed among the members of the community. This
Is that
allowed
enough for
all the
everyone?
necessary
Yes,
work to be
that
done
should be
efficiently and with minimal effort for each individual. Knowledge was not a secret, but was passed down from generation to generation. The elders taught the younger ones how to set traps, how to distinguish tracks, how to predict the weather. It was a collective bank of knowledge accessible to everyone.
You're going to take your stick and you're going to place it here.
If someone fell ill or was unable to do their job, the community took care of them. No one was left to fend for themselves. A sense of solidarity and mutual assistance was the basis of psychological stability. If you found yourself alone, you would be faced with an overwhelming amount of work. You would have to be a woodcutter, a cook, a doctor, and a builder all at once. You simply would not be able to cope with it physically. But even worse, you would have faced absolute loneliness. The lack of human communication, the inability to share your fears and hopes, is enormous psychological pressure. Your spirit would have been broken by the silence and emptiness. The safety of the camp was also ensured collectively. While some rested, others kept watch, watching for approaching danger. A lonely person cannot afford to rest properly. Their sleep will always be restless. You would not understand that strength lies not in individualism, but in cooperation. You would try to solve all problems on your own, unable and unwilling to ask for help. This approach may work in business, but in a winter forest, it leads to death. Ultimately, you would realize that humans are social creatures. You can only survive together, supporting each other. Isolation in extreme conditions kills as inevitably as cold and hunger. Even if you mastered all the practical skills we talked about, it still wouldn't be enough. There was another most important level of knowledge, an intuitive understanding of nature. It was something that couldn't be explained in words, something that was absorbed with your mother's milk. The indigenous people knew how to predict the weather from subtle signs. From the shape of the clouds, the direction of the wind, and the behavior of animals, they could predict the approach of a blizzard long before it began. This gave them time to prepare.
The wind tells us many things. What do you see in the clouds, my child?
I see a bird.
They understood the language of animals. Unusual behavior of birds, howling of wolves at unusual times, sudden disappearance of small rodents. All this was important information for them about changes in the world around them. They had a thorough knowledge of the properties of different materials. They knew which wood was best for making skis and which was best for knife handles. They knew which animals' tendons were the strongest and which clay retained heat best. They possessed profound knowledge in the field of medicine. They knew hundreds of plants that could stop bleeding, reduce fever, or relieve pain. Their pharmacy was right under their feet. This knowledge was not a set of dry facts. It was a holistic worldview in which everything in the world was interconnected. Man was not the master of nature, but only one of the threads in its complex web. You would look at a forest and see only trees. An Indian saw in it food, medicine, building material, and a sacred place. Your gaze would be that of a stranger, while his was that of a member of the family. This deep, almost mystical unity with nature was their main secret. It gave them confidence and peace of mind that were inaccessible to people who saw the world around them as nothing more than a set of resources and threats. You would act according to instructions, according to a memorized algorithm. They acted on impulse, on intuition, based on the experience of thousands of generations. This was the insurmountable gulf between you. Ultimately, you would not have survived, not because you lacked strength or equipment. You would have lacked wisdom, the wisdom to understand that in this icy world, you must not fight, but listen, not take, but ask, not conquer, but belong. We see that survival in winter conditions for the indigenous peoples of North America was not a set of tricks, but a whole philosophy. It was a system in which practical skills were inextricably linked to a deep respect for nature and an understanding of its laws. Modern man, with his consumerist and technocratic approach, finds himself completely helpless in this world. History teaches us that true strength lies not in the ability to change the environment to suit ourselves, but in the ability to adapt to it. Knowledge about the properties of snow, animal habits, and the proper organization of daily life turns out to be more important than the most modern technologies. This is a lesson in humility and wisdom that is still relevant today. Please suggest topics for future videos that you would like to see on our channel in the comments. Perhaps you are interested in Apache military art or the social structure of the Iroquois tribes. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on new research into the wisdom of ancient peoples.